Well, hey, y'all. Welcome to the When We Walk podcast, where this is a podcast where we talk about the things we talk about when we take our walks. I'm Shireen.
I'm Micah.
Let's chat.
So the weather, the warmth has arrived a little bit.
I mean, it's warmer. It's still winter.
But anything we from negative 10 above negative 10. So it's walkable. We've taken some walks this week.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. People around here, I heard a guy say, there's a lot of talk right now, like we're feeling like spring is coming. It's not. This is just a break in the cold.
Yeah.
This is not the beginning of a new season.
No, there's although when you walk outside and you hear birds and the sun is finally shining, you're like, I don't know, there's hope that it's coming, but it's not. Not yet.
It's not. It's not. It'll be back.
Yeah. We're still in February. So.
And I do think our investment in good gear, like waterproof gear, because usually when the melting is going on, it's kind of hard to walk even when it is getting warmer.
Yeah, there are puddles.
We're
like trudging through.
Yeah, it's great.
But it's worth it.
It's been good. Healthy.
Yeah.
Like it. So I had this thought. A lot of people recently are talking about, it's a big fad right now, is the cold plunge thing.
Oh, yeah.
Remember we just had dinner with a guy and he was telling us all about it. And I had several other conversations. A friend of ours who lives in Seattle, he does his plunge 3 or 4 times a week in Puget Sound. He just walks in and walks out.
I can't even fathom that.
So I just but I started thinking did God how people are we identify something in the natural world that we really enjoy, and so we just we want to recreate use the heck out of it,
or right? Recreate it and manufacture it so we can have it in our home
and all the time. And so I wonder if I used to always say there's just no good reason why we have winter. I've never been a big winter person.
No, neither.
And now I'm wondering, when you think about all the health benefits of extreme cold, because there's so many mental health benefits, there's so many physical health benefits to this plunge thing. You start wondering, should we just embrace the winter a little better?
I bet there are people who do. Yeah.
I'm sure there are. But I never thought about the benefits. When I think about just being terribly cold,
right,
it doesn't seem to be life-giving.
Nope.
But so anyway,
but there turns out.
So we've taken winter, the season that so many people don't really love, and we've put it into this little canister in our basements, and we get into it
not
in
us,
the morning.
but
Some people
does.
we haven't done this. We get into it in order to increase our mental health and our physical resiliency and all that kind of stuff, where maybe we should just take more walks outside when it's freezing cold.
Maybe.
I don't know. And the water versus the air, I don't know all the science around it. It just got me thinking this week.
You got to be careful. No, we are not recommending this.
What, the plunge thing?
Yeah, just in case.
People love it. So I have started this week because I've talked to so many people about it recently.
Are you doing the cold shower?
Before I get out of the shower, just to see how cold and how long I can handle it. So we'll see. We'll see how long it lasts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to try to embrace winter with cold showers. Not me.
No, you will never do that.
No, I will never.
Okay. That's great. All right. So when it comes to this month in relationships, I think originally as we were talking through topics, we kind of disqualified ourselves from talking about dating because we were like, you know what, we've just been out of that world for a long time. We're not as much connected to a ton of people who are still in that world in the same way that we used to doing young adult ministry for so long. And so maybe we don't have a lot to say. Dating has changed a lot. And the more we talked about it, the more we realized there's actually some really timeless principles.
Yeah, I think so.
To how to date well, regardless of whether,
you
are, living in the social media dating app world or whether you're more, years ago, the more traditional style. So there's just some clear principles that we can hit on that we'll get into in this episode. But first, let's talk about our very first date.
We should. It was interesting.
Yeah.
We knew this date was coming. It was building because we had hung out for so long.
Yep.
And we were in college.
Which we'll get to later about principles of dating, because that's one of them. Yep.
So we were in college, so not a lot of money, right? So we weren't going on a fancy date.
No.
You took me to this cute little Cuban outdoor restaurant.
Caliente Cab.
Yeah, which we love in Athens. And I think you came and you picked me up from my apartment.
Lunch date. Which is wise, because if it doesn't go well for either party, you can always say, hey, I got to go. I got things to do. And if it is going well,
you can keep hanging out.
Chilling.
Yeah. Okay. So we went on a great lunch date, had great conversation from what I remember. And then you said, hey, let's go back to my house. I think you were living with those guys at a friend's house. Let's go back to my house and like watch a movie or something. And so I had been over to that house before just to hang out. And we got there. And we started watching, what movie was
Rounders.
it? Rounders. Yeah. Oh, that is a great movie.
Yeah. That's a good movie.
And one of your roommates walks in who...
He was like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah. He was like, oh, this is a great movie. Can I join y'all?
Yeah.
And he just like hung out with us on our first date watching a movie.
Yes.
Well, and then, so that doesn't end there. Then you go to take me home.
Yep.
And I don't have my key to get in to my apartment. And I'm stuck. And it was summer, so I only had one roommate home for the summer with me. And I had to call her to come and let me in. So I just remember us sitting on my stairs right in front. We just sat there and waited.
It was great. It was a little extended time
I was
together.
So embarrassed.
You were?
Oh my gosh. I was mortified that I forgot my keys.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
I was like, this is the awkward ending. Like we said goodbye and then I can't find my keys and get in the house. And then we just sat there.
Yeah.
And this was before phones. So
maybe
it's not
that
like
was
you're
the
like
10 minutes though of like deep connection that.
Was it? I don't remember
hour.
that.
I think it was like an hour. I don't know. It was a while. Yeah.
But turns out.
Worked out well.
Worked out well for us. But it was very awkward first date.
Yeah. It's great. It's good times. I'm sure people listening have had their awkward moments.
Yes. You got to laugh at those.
Yeah.
I know in the moment they're awkward, but I think it's good for everyone to have one of those awkward date moments.
Human nature. It's
First,
life.
It makes for a great story next time you're with your friends. And second of all, like you got to learn how to work through that. Right?
Yeah, you do.
So
if it goes somewhere, and if it doesn't, move on. But here's a little dating advice. Don't assume an awkward first date means there's no future.
That's true.
Because sometimes you can be quick to be like, there's just wasn't chemistry, or just was kind of weird, or you bail out because you're like, oh, they must think I'm whatever. So an awkward first date for us was a great start.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that helps to know, like, no matter where we are in the world of things, like relationship, we are still humans who have to work at relationship and building a connection. Yep.
So speaking of dating,
okay.
There's a lot we could talk about here. So let's just kind of jump around and see where it goes. I think that dating seems to be, from people we've talked to, it's hard these days.
I think it's way harder.
Yeah. There's all kinds of like big kind of sweeping generalizations people make these days about kind of the dating scene and kind of the younger generation and how they view dating.
Learning how to communicate well.
All that kind of stuff has influenced social media, phones, texting instead of voice to voice or face to face. All that stuff has created different dynamics than what you and I were used to, for sure. And so there's certain aspects of dating that are newer and kind of new territory for people to navigate. But there's also some timeless wisdom, I think, for how you do it. That I think anyone can apply to their life.
Yeah. I also think we have to remember, like, dating is like a privilege and luxury that I think more Western cultures. Like, we've traveled a lot of other places, and it's different there. So I think understanding that you're making a choice here, and that you're learning to have a relationship, build a relationship, communicate. It's practicing for what you are hoping to have later. Whereas in other parts of the world, it's just a commitment. Like, I'm committing to this person regardless of what, emotion or connection, whatever.
That's true. And even thinking, I remember in our 20s being in India, where arranged marriages are still very much a thing. They were then for sure. And thinking how awful that would be and how confining that would be and how unromantic that is. And now, 20 years later, I think about arranged marriages and I realize there's actually a lot of wisdom.
There's
now,
so
of course,
much wisdom.
Anything can be misused, but in its purest sense, to get the input from your elders, whoever those elders are, whether it's parents, whether it's pastors in your life, whether it's mentors in your life, to get their wisdom on the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, especially if you're dating and looking to get married in your early 20s, is so smart.
I agree.
Because you just don't know. Like, you
don't know what you need 20 years from now.
You don't know what
40
makes
years
a healthy
from
marriage.
Now.
Yeah.
No.
So more than, you're going to be attracted, you're going to be drawn, all the romantic stuff, but like to at least have the input of an elder or somebody who's further down the road on you to say, what do you think of this person?
Right.
And actually like taking them, maybe going on a date with, if they don't know them, and letting this mentor, letting this elder in your life, letting parents, if they still kind of hold that place in your life, letting them speak into the relationship, because oftentimes because they've lived more life, they can see things you just often can't see if you're kind of young and in love.
I think that brings like a good first principle of like dating in community, right? So I think regardless of where you meet a person, whether it's online or, someone did connect the two of you, I think dating in community, and this was important to us, like we hung out first with friends before we ever went on just you and me date. And so we got to know each other in these settings where actually there's not as much pressure. I think it's better to group hang out date if you can, because you see a side of each other. Like I watched you hang out with your friends and the ridiculous things that y'all did, but still thought you were wonderful. But like even seeing you in a Bible study setting and things like that. And I know the same thing, like you just get to know someone in those settings differently. Yeah. And so I think that's why, hanging out in groups is so important. That's especially if you're younger. I know we've suggested that to our daughter and our kids, like as they become interested in people, like we'll just hang out as a group of friends first, get to know each other, hang out and connect on that level and see what you see about these people. Yeah. But then I think also when you do start like more commitment, maybe one-on-one, to bring in like, okay, we're going to go as a couple and hang out with these other couples or bring, that person into your home. I think that's important to let parents see your dynamics and, or other couples, like you said, mentor type couples. I just think that's so important. So dating in community, I think is like.
It is. And so what I'm not advocating for, I don't know if I said this clear, I'm not saying we should go back to arranged marriages. I'm saying there are aspects of it that are good, and the communal aspect is really important. And I think what we can do and what we have a tendency to do in our dating world is to become extremely isolated. Yes. You just do your own little dates, your own little time. You hang out in a basement or an apartment or whatever, and you just become your own little unit. And I think the vulnerability and the willingness and the wisdom to say, no, we're gonna do this in a way that's very interconnected with the people who have been a part of our lives up to this point, and integrate into each other's lives rather than separate out from both sets of friends or both families or whatever. And then have the courage to say, hey, what do you think of?
Yes, go back and have that conversation.
Like what were your first impressions, or what do you think? What do you see? And sometimes people will see things that you can't see.
For sure,
because you're blinded by your desire. Other times they'll maybe encourage you, like, hey, there's maybe more here than you think there is. And, I saw a spark, and maybe you should at least go on another date or whatever. So I think community, whether that is friends, whether it's your church community, pastors, your parents, whatever it is, having some people who are further along and who have been around your life for a long time, speak into the relationship, see it and to speak into it.
I think if there is someone you are dating that you are, in a sense, hiding or not bringing into other circles, I think that's a kind of a warning sign of like, what is it about either the relationship that you might be hiding or the person? Like, if you are, I'm not, I know people have done this. Like, oh no, I'm not going to bring them to meet my parents.
I don't know if they would like them.
Yeah. And if that's the case, then you do need to do that because then there's something that needs to be brought to the surface. I I think that's really important.
Yep. That's good.
Community turns out for everything. Jesus knew we need community for so many reasons, but dating is a really, really good one.
It is. And then I think in addition to that, in the same way, like having the courage to do it where people can see it and speak into it, is then with the two of you, as you're beginning to build a relationship, that you just talk openly about what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the places where
honest conversation.
Things get really weird. And that is timeless. I mean, that we had these conversations with friends when we were in college. We had these conversations with young adults that we were mentoring over the last many years, and we still see it today. And it is just the tendency to kind of keep things vague and the waters muddy. And what often happens is you just kind of create some, you bring dynamics into the relationship that make it hard for, like, the natural progression of any relationship, right? No relationships are static. They're always moving in some direction. They're either moving towards one another, they're moving away from each other, there's conflict, there's connection. Like, there's always dynamics happening in a relationship. And early on, because if you're new in each other's lives, you don't know each other real well, you've got to learn to talk about those dynamics and say,
you're
feeling
saying
this,
like
I'm
connection.
sensing it.
Oh, okay. You're
well,
saying
no, like where is this going?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
where is this going? And so, I mean, you and I, it was a great example for us because we were kind of hung out that summer.
Oh,
in
yeah, I remember
groups,
that.
And it turns out the night that I called you and asked you on a date, you had literally...
I had resolved, like...
you were talking to your roommate right before.
He has not made a move yet.
He's cheap dating me.
Yes.
And that's what we used to call it, cheap dating, is it's just this tendency to, like, I'm going to just kind of play it cool.
I enjoy this person. I'm going to hang out with them enough, but I'm not going to commit to anything.
Yeah. Or I'm not even going to say anything out of the fear of being rejected or the fear of hearing no. Do you remember? I just remembered this. One of the first times I asked you on a date, you said no. And I don't know if we had already...
You asked me to a wedding.
Yeah.
Who takes someone as their first date?
I don't know.
People.
Does that mean something? I don't know.
That is not the first time I want to be public.
Was that before our lunch or after?
That was way before.
Oh. So
you asked me to a wedding, and it was like all of our friends' wedding, and it would have like made a statement.
It would have made a statement, yeah.
I was not ready for that.
Okay.
I don't know. Wedding date is I think that's
lunch.
a different level.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking at the room because I need some help here. I think wedding is a different level, but maybe. That's just me.
But I do think it's kind of the defining the relationship thing as you go.
Yeah.
That you do have some conversations.
Yeah, I think so. You have to.
Yeah, and a lot of times that can just begin with like, hey, how are you feeling about things? Like you don't always have to be the one to like, hey, I need you to know that whatever. But like just being willing to ask the question as you spend time together, or as you kind of start noticing some sparks or whatever.
And it can be either person. Like, I don't know. I think traditionally girls have felt like, oh, I've got to wait for him to make. No, I think if you feel like he is cheap dating you, if you feel like, you know, you're being dragged along, like say something. It's okay. Hey, I really enjoy you. I've enjoyed our time together. I am seeing this moving forward. How do you see it? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And I think having those brave conversations, it sounds so hard to do, but the more we do it, it just prepares us for hard conversations that you will have to have in marriage and in friendship and with your kids. And I mean, I think it's just practice.
It's a part of life. It's relationships. Yeah.
And if you feel too scared to have that hard conversation, then maybe that is an indicator that this is not someone you feel comfortable or safe enough to even, kind of be that vulnerable with. So
that's true. And I think it's depending on how you're wired. I think there's that conversation there's a couple ditches. One is you don't say anything at all and you just leave it very vague, and it can really begin to muddy the relationship and kind of affect the ability to connect and move forward. The other thing is you go way too far. And it's like, hey, I just want you to know, I think I'm going to marry you.
Oh, yes.
And that is
friends who have done that.
I did that.
You did do that.
I did with someone, and we're still friends today.
We've made mistakes.
You know, I think that's the other side of it is like a little too much. And that's where I think it's good to maybe ask questions of like, hey, how do you feel like this is going? Kind of see where that person is. Because if you're the one that's feeling it, you might feel the pressure of like, I'm either going to go to the ditch of I'm just going to suppress all these feelings, or two, I'm just going to like blurt it all out. If you're the one that's feeling it, maybe just to ask the question, how do you feel like this is going? And if the person's like, I love being your friend, then maybe that's a great, okay. and you don't, again, have to be like, oh my gosh, I thought we were going to get married, but to be like, okay, I was curious if it might be something more than that.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that maybe it's not.
We are so afraid of rejection.
We are.
We are so afraid of rejection in every area of life. And so I think that keeps us from even asking those questions of someone else. And I think we have to, this is maybe where's our identity anchored? Are we anchored in the Lord? But two, like, it's okay. There are going to be seasons where there comes rejection, and we've got to learn how to walk through it.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've got to be brave with those
So
conversations. Yeah. We've got to be okay and say, you know what, this doesn't affect who I am and what I have to offer someone else down the road. It just wasn't a fit right here, right now. I mean, that's going to happen in all other kinds of relationships too, work relationships, business relationships, friendships, and things like that.
Yeah, it's a part of life. Yeah. And with that is, I think in the air in these days, there's a lot of like attempting to avoid the awkward as much as possible.
Oh, well, you can.
The reality
you can do it on your phone.
Awkward is life.
It is.
Like life is awkward because we're human beings and we're trying to figure out how to interact with each other.
So true.
And if you just be okay with the awkward and recognize that that is going to be a part of just your human interaction with other individuals, you'll be able to have some more open and honest conversations and relationships in general. If you can just get over the fact that awkward is normal. Like, it's going to happen.
It is. I think it's funny. You even saying that makes me think. I watched first season when Laylee was like preteen, watched Gilmore Girls. And you probably have never watched Gilmore Girls, have you?
I mean, I think I've seen an episode, pieces of an episode.
So
maybe.
Mostly mother-daughter
I can know what it is, like Rory and the girl.
Lorelai. So, okay, anyway. You watch shows like that and you're like, wow, they are so like quick-witted in awkward situations, and it makes it funny. And, I mean, the way they talk is like fast and quick-wit and all this. And
because it's written.
Yes. And I keep thinking like, no one's life looks like that. No one is that perfectly scripted in what they can do and say in these hard, awkward, funny, whatever situations. So you've just got to not take yourself so seriously and kind of be willing to have those awkward.
I was just reminded of another awkward dating moment in my life.
It wasn't
before
me then.
You.
Okay,
this was like a friend of mine this was in high school, and he scored a date with this girl that he was really pursuing, and he was like, but we need a double date. Like, her parents want to make sure it's not just the two of us. So will you go with me and her best friend?
Oh,
and so I had I wasn't interested in dating this girl. I was just there to
support your friend,
support him. And so we went to this putt-putt place, and it came time to stand in line and pay. And so the two of them were ahead of us, and they stood together, and he paid for her. And then this girl's standing next to me, and I'm thinking, I'm not interested. Like, I'm not trying to build anything here. And so I bent down and tied my shoe.
Oh, wow.
And pretended that like I played dumb. Like, I didn't realize it was time to pay. And then, so she just like stepped ahead. She paid for herself. And then I got up and was like, hey, did you, that's fine. I'll just pay for me.
You had no intention of paying for her.
No intention. No.
Wow.
No. And then we sat in the field later that night while the other two made out. Literally within like arm's reach of us.
And high we just school sat there so awkward,
talking awkwardly until we could go home. So
awkward moments happen. You just got to learn how to embrace them and laugh about them later. It's great.
Okay, so last thing I think it's important to talk about is when it comes to the physical aspect of a relationship and dating. This is a big deal, and I think we're in kind of this mentality. It's kind of in the air we breathe that like sex is not a big deal. Sex is casual. Sex is friendship. Sex is, it's not.
It's really, how you express your love and affection to someone.
Yeah. So I think it's important for us to remember that, I mean, from a biblical standpoint, sex was the it was the culmination, consummation, literally. I mean, it was the culmination of a long process of coming together and eventually making the marriage covenant. And it was like the seal.
It was part of that commitment.
It was the seal on the covenant. It was the seal on the commitment. And the fact that God designed it in such a way that like everything really leads to this moment, and then kind of life begins anew from that point forward. I think it's important for us to understand that sex is extremely sacred. It's extremely special. It's one of the only things that we can do with another individual that involves the three primary aspects of who we are: body, soul, and spirit. And the coming together of those, all three aspects of who we are with another human being, is extremely intimate.
And you're even giving away pieces of yourself that are not intended that until that commitment is
so even made. if you try to casualize it, I guess that's, I don't even know if that's a word, it is by design not that. It's just not casual, and we can't casualize it because it still is what it is. And so I think even from a practical standpoint, though, like even if you're not quite so sure on that side of it, though the Bible should convince us, but even if the Bible doesn't convince you and you're like, but what? I mean, that feels archaic. And I would even say, just from a practical standpoint, as soon as physical intimacy gets involved in a relationship, things get out of balance.
Yep.
So
true.
You know, I like the wisdom of like the sexual side of your relationship should never be more intimate than any other piece of your relationship.
In your dating
relationship. Yeah. So like if you're still just building friendship, if you still hadn't even talked about anything really important, but you have sex, like you just threw everything out of whack.
Yep.
And so,
and you're building a relationship on the physical, which is never going to hold for the long term.
Yep. And so it muddies the water. It muddies the ability for you to be able to discern, like, do I want to spend more time with this person? Do I want to spend my life with this person? This attraction, Song of Solomon talks about it. Do not arouse or awaken love before it so desires. Like this, once like physical attraction becomes a primary gratifier in the relationship, it's really hard to see clearly the other aspects of the relationship that are actually going to be the things
that carry you
that you spend the rest of your life building your relationship on. Communication, friendship, connection, those types of things.
And we said it in the marriage one, but this idea of intimacy, we immediately think physical, and actually intimacy is building all these other things up so that your physical connection will be more fulfilling and life-giving and meaningful in that committed relationships where intimacy has been built in all other aspects of your relationship. And so dating allows you to practice building intimacy in other ways first. And that is where, we as believers in the Western world in dating have to really work on practicing what that looks like, healthy communication, building intimacy in those ways, and then practicing self-control. I mean, it is a fruit of the Spirit. And the best way to practice it is in the physical sense of your dating relationship. If you're physically attracted to one another.
Yep. It totally is. And
it's true.
And I have, honestly, I know we're saying this like really strongly, but lots of empathy for those who are in the dating world, who are going too far sexually, whatever, because we live in a world that is just cheering you on in every way. Such a sexualized culture, even to the point where you almost feel bad or wrong if you're not having sex before you're married, living together before you're married, like basically doing all the things without the covenant is kind of what our culture tells us to do.
But there's always room to change those patterns. I mean, we've gotten all the way into premaritals, couples that we have done marriage counseling with and got to that point knowing they're living together, they're having sex, and we have this conversation with them and they have an aha of like, no, we really do want to enter in a different way. And they will make the choice then and there for the rest of their engagement to, okay, I'm going to go live with my parents. You stay in the house. We are going to turn this around so that we can focus on other aspects of our relationship as we grow and build, but then also honor God and come into this covenant with a renewed focus on how we want to prioritize the ways we go about building intimacy in our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back just to the very early church, I mean, one of the things, there was a handful of things they were known for when they first began to establish this community called Christians. They were known for generosity. They were known for hospitality. They brought all kinds of people in, and they were known for sexual purity.
Yeah.
And I know it feels very, it can feel a little prudish or a little old school to talk like this, but I mean, it is one of the radical commitments we make that aligns us with God's design and actually sets us up for God's best.
Right.
And you're right. When we blow it, there's always grace.
Always.
There's always grace.
Yes.
And if it's, but it doesn't mean that we throw the standard away, and we can't kind of let more our secular culture set the standard for what healthy relationship should look like sexually. So
that's good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's such a complicated world. Dating is.
There's so many other places we could go.
There's so many, and it would be easy to, it's a lot easier to sit down with someone and say, hey, if they're dating or wanting to date, and be like, hey, what questions do you have? How can we? Because everybody's personality is different. Their relational dynamics are different. Their even history with relationships is different. But hopefully, I think what we've talked about today are kind of timeless, pretty universal nuggets of wisdom that if you apply them, they'll work out well.
It's great.
Okay. All right. Well, let's end with what we're watching, just because we picked up a new show this week.
We did.
Yep.
This was your...
Yep.
I would probably have never...
You'd never...
choose this show.
I was actually, as we were watching it, I wonder at what point you're going to get to the point where you're just like, okay.
I'm done.
Yeah. But you were like,
so far,
you seem to be into it. Yeah. So it's Alone. Alone on the History Channel. Yeah. So we started season 1, episode 1. We're way behind.
First of all, is it really on the History Channel?
I think so.
I don't know. It's on something we stream, but the fact that it's History Channel already makes me feel like, wow, we're old. Who watches the History Channel anymore?
I don't know.
I didn't know anybody that.
It's like a new show. I don't know. Well,
okay.
Anyway, so or a newer show. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. I hear great things about it.
They go and drop people
in the wilderness and see who can survive the longest
with a camera. So you don't even have a camera crew. You are literally on your own with 10 items of their choosing.
Mm-hmm. And they
have to survive. And there are wild animals.
Wild animals everywhere. One episode, one dude didn't even make it.
He didn't even make it 24 hours.
Yeah. So
we knew. They dropped him off and he cried. So
we called it. We called it. Yeah.
I think he's going home
He
first.
loves his family, which is very cool.
Yes, very sweet.
So it's good that he's back with them. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll maybe give updates as we go. I'm sure there are people out there who are way ahead on this show and have thoughts. So, all right. Well, hopefully that conversation was good for y'all. Always a fun thing to talk about. So thanks for joining us on When We Walk.